Well, this is an awkward moment. I'm trying to get through. Howie, go ahead and start. I can't find her logo.
All right. Well, it's
Now, for all you've done to your bodies, it's still real to me, damn it. I mean,
And I found it.
there it is. And of course, welcome to the It's Still Real to Me. A day late, dollar short, but we're here. Joining us as usual is Randy Cunningham and Jeremy Johnson. We're going to be talking about, or they're going to be talking about the three best matches they've ever saw, whether it's in person or on TV. But we're going to kick the show off tonight with any news that y'all may have heard of. I haven't heard of any news lately. The only thing that I heard of was the WWE has signed another Fatu or part of the bloodline, but I don't really know who it is. They didn't say who it was. Randy, would you happen to know?
Zilla Fatu, who is I believe it's the son of Umaga. So,
Yeah, I think you're right.
He's been in Houston at Booker T's wrestling school. The big boy, I think he may be a little bigger than anybody going. But I tell you the thing that intrigues me that's been in the news is the WWE making Jacob Fatu or somebody making Jacob Fatu remove X, what do you want to call it, tweets about Roman Reigns and referring to Roman Reigns as the head of the table and the tribal chief. So they're teasing a little bit. Maybe Jacob Fatu is not part of that bloodline, but with the other bloodline when it comes back. So
yeah,
we'll see. We'll see when we get there. And not to jump off the news, I think the biggest news, and I know I was really shocked that I talked to Howie about it, and he didn't seem to love it. But making news all around the internet right now is AEW 250, Will Ospreay and MJF going head-to-head in an hour-long contest with MJF defeating Will Ospreay, and folks trying to figure out what that means to the future of AEW. I don't think it means anything except they wanted to put a title on a heel and take it off of their top babyface. So thought it was a great match, and Howie can go into what he liked about it and didn't like, but it was definitely old school. It started from the time the show started and ran till.
It was an hour long. It was an hour long time limit. So
it was an hour and 12 minutes when they were leaving the ring. So and did that Japan thing where they brought out oxygen and ice, and both wrestlers are injured. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a nod back to New Japan Pro Wrestling, and I enjoyed it.
I thought it was good. Don't get me wrong. It's just that you saw a lot of the same moves over and over. So I just kind of got. I'm not big on these hour-long matches. Even back in the day, I wasn't a big.
Yeah.
I just lose. Right. I just lose my patience. Not patience, but I just lose focus on it after a while. Let them come out there, go 10 or 15 minutes, and then move on to the next. Let's see two more people, which I know a lot of people likes that hour-long match. But, overall, I thought it was a good match. Like I said, don't get me wrong. It's just that for a 250 show, it's supposed to be a highlight show. You had one match for a solid hour, and I'm just kind of scratching my head on that. Yeah. So, Jeremy, what's your thoughts?
Well, for me, the question I have is in my mind, this is the two top talents that you have on the men's side in AEW. And in my mind, this is a pay-per-view match. This is not a, I know it's AEW.
You actually took the words right out of Randy's mouth. That's what he told me last night when we talked about it.
Yeah, to me, this is Hogan and Goldberg in the Georgia Dome on Nitro, and that's your biggest opportunity. That's your best. That's the best match that you're going to put together for a pay-per-view. To me,
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at their roster, I like Will Ospreay. I think he's a super talent, and I've always loved MJF. And to me, that's the two best things that you have going right now. And you put it on an hour long to pop a rating. Uh, that should have been a pay-per-view match.
And to Randy's point, yeah, they did take the belt off of Ospreay, but I think it's to build up to Wembley for a rematch between Ospreay against Swerve, and that's kind of giving away the finish right there, I think.
Yeah, it is.
Ospreay's not going anywhere.
No.
But I mean, I,
No, I didn't say he's going anywhere. It's just the fact of they're going to put the belt on Ospreay, take it off of Swerve, put it on Ospreay for a rematch at Wembley.
it becomes do you root for the chaser or the champion? So
Yeah.
I think they positioned themselves for two large pay-per-views out of this. One being Swerve versus Ospreay, the other one being the rematch. And it's funny. It's funny, but I know, and I have 4 matches because I have an honorable mention. It's more of an event, but 3 of the 4 are rematches.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like movies, The first movie's always good. The second movie is always a little bit better.
You
And
just
then,
got story all 3 times, though.
but then when you get to the third one, it usually just kind of bites the big one. So,
And
And
right,
for me though, I said it's a pay-per-view match, but they still got an opportunity here to make. You can always salvage whatever. I just think for me, I love the thought of that being the pay-per-view. I love the thought of it being the AEW title match at Wembley. Between those two, not Swerve, not you know, those two.
could be. It
Just
could be a
my,
rematch.
the
you
thing,
know,
the argument there is Swerve hotter than either one of them? Because right after that, Swerve puts together a little 4-man AEW team that is just he pops the crowd pretty big with his little
yeah,
thing. I agree with Jeremy that Ospreay and MJF may be 1-2, but it's hard for me not to put Swerve right there with them.
well, no, I don't. I'm not knocking Swerve at all. I think really, you include him with those two as being really the top of their roster. That's the three best things they've got going on from the men's side,
All
as far as performers.
a former WWE star, a former New Japan star, and ingrown talent. So they have failed maybe to capture. And I think if he was alive, and I was thinking about this during AEW 250, what went wrong and what went right with AEW.
Yeah,
And one of the things that I thought of, and it's really news, is the two people for the first year, first 50 AEW Dynamites was um, Cody Rhodes and Luke Harper. And they're both gone. So what
yeah,
started that company, and they built a lot on that company. We lost one of them, and the other one's the WWE champion. So
hmm
um, I really, when I examined the whole 5-year run of AEW, you find a period that's really strong at the beginning, build around that TNT title with Luke Harper and Cody Rhodes and Luke. We forget how big the Dark Order was in the first year and a half
yeah,
of AEW. Easily the largest faction, biggest following in AEW.
yeah.
So I was surprised when I started to think about it to realize how much his death, Brody Lee, I guess is the proper word to call him,
Yeah.
how much Brody Lee's death
Hmm.
really did affect AEW. I really think that second, late second year of the COVID year uh, gets lost in his death, and I mean I can't help but think about that.
Yeah. Well, and the thing that gets me is I think I was a fan of Brody Lee, but I wasn't a fan of necessarily. I was a fan of him being the head of the Dark Order. I didn't like the turn where he's like a mob boss. I didn't like that aspect of it. So I really feel like maybe his character hadn't, you know, he was just getting started character wise. I think there was a lot more to Brody Lee than what we even saw.
I
You
think
know,
You
Jeremy,
think it's going to evolve even more, but
yeah,
unfortunately,
yeah,
quick passing.
I could I could see it completely. I like I love the Luke Harper character. Now I'm sure they wouldn't get went strictly that route, but I just think that his death, he was just really getting started, and his career was really starting to take off. And it's we've told sad stories on here, and there's some horrible things that people have done that hurt themselves, and this one really hurts because he was a stand-up guy, you know and really his career was just really starting to take off to me.
the one thing we've probably ignored is how funny Brody Lee was and how funny those Dark Order skits. They
They were.
just him throwing papers and
Yeah.
it was really there was a comedy angle to it that we don't appreciate. Don't
Yeah.
know down the road of Brody Lee, Luke Harper, whatever you call him, but it really did. He is very missed in AEW and
Yeah.
in a very long time, a very long time to replace his presence. And let's not forget, Cody Rhodes was the front of that company and he left for the WWE.
Yeah.
So, we talk about WWE not signing very many people. The one signing they had was Cody Rhodes. That was huge and changed the direction of the company. And a lot of people will say why they think Cody Rhodes left. I have my own opinion, and I don't think anybody's ever got it right. I don't think the truth has
Yeah.
ever been told why Cody Rhodes left.
And the truth will
Yeah.
never be told because he got too much respect for Tony Khan.
Yeah.
Yes, I don't
And
think
they signed NDAs. So
I don't like AEW as much as Cody Rhodes wanted to be Cody Rhodes, and every move he made, every move, everything that Cody Rhodes is, has been to promote Cody Rhodes. My favorite wrestler and what wrestling's about is to be who the biggest star you can be.
yes.
Rhodes bet on himself, and then from there, he made every move that was correct
Yep.
to Cody Rhodes to where Cody Rhodes is. Like it or not, leaving AEW helped his career. But like it or not, leaving AEW, he will not be. He had a chance to be Triple H in AEW and be the future owner of the company. He's a wrestler, and I think and that's my opinion is he wanted to be a wrestler, and he wasn't in AEW, and that was too much for him. So,
Hmm.
but anyway, no real news other than that. And I also thought the other thing coming out of 250 Howie was we have the women's main event for AEW All In London set with Mariah May versus Tony Storm, and that's kind of cemented with the appearance of her as Tony Storm at AEW 250. Also, you see You see the AEW versus the Elite rivalry building with a huge role for Mark Briscoe, which I'm very happy to see. But I think that huge role for Mark Briscoe may give away to the returning Kenny Omega by London.
Guys, Randy, I know you watched it. Jeremy, I'm not sure about you, but how much did Mariah May look like Tony Storm?
Enough that it really confused me.
Well,
So the
there's
people
one
that,
distinguishing factor. There's one very distinguishing
yeah,
factor when it comes to identifying Tony Storm, and I will not mention it, but I think all three of us know what that is. So,
And it might have been a song back in the mid 80s. Yeah, well, that's all I'm going to say, but baby got back.
but we'll move on. With that being said, uh, with the people that's new to the show, let's go ahead and let everybody know. Follow us on YouTube. Go like, subscribe, share. Let everybody else know. With us being on Friday night, which everybody that's a wrestling fan knows is Friday Night SmackDown. So when I'm looking this way, I'm watching SmackDown occasionally. So looking to my right, looking at my right side there. But anyway, top three matches everybody saw. Of course, I try to hold it to three. Randy's always going to have an honorable mention or two. So that's why I started out with 10, then went down to 5, and now we're going down to 3. Before it's over with, it may be 1. Who knows? But anyway, Jeremy's just got 3. I think he's proud of himself.
I am.
And
I am.
and my
I've always got additions. I'll probably think of one while we're in this discussion, but I'm
normally
really settled on 3.
normally what happens is when Randy mentions 1, then you'll like, oh God, I forgot about it. Yeah, that's good. So
Yep.
you'll agree with that. So Randy, what you got?
So my honorable mention is more of an event that happened 70 something times. Now I was close. There's a lot of great matches. There's a lot of matches we don't look at and go, "Oh, that's great." I don't think there's no bigger match in the history of wrestling than Andre versus Hulk, but that didn't make
Mm.
top 3. My honorable mention goes with something that was unique that had never happened. I saw it in person and I saw it on pay-per-view. It was out of the creative mind to me of the greatest wrestler / creative person in the history, and it featured probably 8 of the hottest 10 wrestlers in the world at the time. What I'm going to call my honorable mention, which I really don't even call it an honorable mention. To me, it's the greatest single event in wrestling was the Great American Bash, the original headliner. The Great American Bash was headlined by the original War Games, which featured, to me, the greatest lineup in the history of pro wrestling each other. I found a picture. The
Nice.
Horsemen, the Four Horsemen, 73 times or something ridiculous like that, went down the aisle to face the Road Warriors and the Superpowers. I saw it in person, and I saw it on the pay-per-view in Charlotte. There's 2 things that happened in this match always. Arn Anderson started it with Dusty Rhodes, and the good guys won. But how can you watch the War Games and the match beyond? 1987. I've never seen anything like it. They're still trying to capture it. Both of these competing TVs, we're talking about AEW and WWE, put very bad versions of it on, but there was nothing like the original Match Beyond War Games. The Horsemen with J.J. Dillon, the Good Guys, the Superpowers, Nikita Koloff, Dusty Rhodes, the Road Warriors with versus Paul Ellering. All summer that thing toured around. Nothing like it. So I don't know if you call it a match, but it was an event to me that is as big as anything that's ever happened.
When you said it happened 70-some times, I thought you were talking about you going to Buffalo Wild Wings
I
this
had
week.
Buffalo Wild Wings today, so
I thought you were talking about 70-some times this week, but
Ah,
no. Hey, let me go ahead and mention what we're going to be talking about next week before we get any further, because I've been thinking about it, and with what you just said, I want to go ahead and talk about it. Let's talk about the feud between Dusty Rhodes and Ric Flair.
oh, that'd be great.
mm,
That'd be great, and that's part of that
yeah.
history.
So,
40, 70, whatever it was, they got together. But now, my top three matches are matches.
right, yeah.
My top three matches also, and I'll start with number three and then go. I think you can take one of them and identify them as the best match in that company's history. And number three for me is this one. And
Ah,
how can that not be? WrestleMania 13, Bret the Hitman Hart, Stone Cold Steve Austin, the double turn, Austin laying in the ground, time limit, bleeding, passes out, and the excellent execution takes the win, only to have Stone Cold become bigger, bigger, bigger. One of the true top matches. There is no winner, there is no loser. That version of it, Bret Hart won the match. But over the next 5 years, Stone Cold Steve Austin becomes the biggest wrestler in the sport, maybe ever. So, WrestleMania 13 is my number three. Bret the Hitman Hart versus the Texas Rattlesnake, Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Would you call that match the passing of the torch?
I do.
hmm,
That is to me that is equal to Andre and Hulk, and there is very much an element of passing the torch.
Good deal. Jeremy, your thoughts, or you just want to go ahead with your number three?
no, I don't disagree, and that's one of those matches that I've watched, but I agree. It's probably one of the best matches that there could be, but it's not on my list. But I I'm a Bret Hart fan. I still feel like at that point Bret Hart had plenty left in the tank, and we all know how that ended up. The screw job and everything that happened afterward. But um, to turn a double turn in that match, a double turn, heel to babyface, babyface to heel. That's tough to do. It happened in that match, and what a story! So that's kind of way I base my criteria. It may not always be the greatest technical match, but what's the story? That was a great story as well.
The height of Vince McMahon's booking is in WrestleMania 13. I hate Vince
Right.
McMahon. WrestleMania 13 is a piece of work, and that wasn't even the main event. The
Mm-mm.
logo, if you remember, was about the Undertaker,
Right.
and we forget that. So
Now, maybe y'all can help me out? Did I hear probably Jim Cornette say that Austin wasn't even supposed to get color that night, but he went against him and got it anyway?
yeah, I think so. That one image that image is why this makes number three. I mean,
Hmm.
and Jeremy makes a point, maybe not the greatest technical, but it is a great technical match. Steve
Hmm.
Austin, maybe he didn't do what we call technical wrestling, but they put together a technical brilliance. And yes, I believe he was not supposed to get colored. The Undertaker actually, in one of his things, talked about Bret Hart, the professional. I've come doing this show has made me realize the Bret Hart is the Harley Race of the WWE.
Hmm, interesting. All right, Jeremy, you want to give us your number three?
Yeah, and number three, and again, I wouldn't call it. I agree with Bret Hart, Stone Cold. Great technical match because those guys are very good technical wrestlers. So I wasn't insinuating that, but that ain't
Yeah,
always my. It's not always my criteria. And really, speaking of which, my number three, and I know we've talked about it before, and I've talked about it before, but for me, it's one of my greatest match that I really appreciated, and that was WrestleMania 18, and that's The Rock versus Hulk Hogan, or Hollywood Hulk Hogan. And now, granted, Hulk Hogan has never been accused of being a great technical wrestler, and neither has The Rock. But again, the thing that gets me is the emotion that the match can bring. And that crowd, and we've talked about that crowd. I get chill bumps thinking about it right now. I'm like The Rock here when he made it, early before when he made his appearances. I love this match. I love it that you got two icons. You got the icon of the 80s, which is, I think, how they build it, icon versus icon. And then you got one of Hulk was the icon of the 80s, no doubt. Rock was one of the icons if you put Stone Cold in that mix. But you got those two together. The facial expressions, every little thing they did mattered. The Rock's eyes, the first time he got, when they locked up and Hulk matched him there, his eyes, his selling, the pause that they did where they're just taking it all in and that crowd is just going nuts and they're just looking around like that. I love it. I love the fact that Hogan turned babyface. I love the story. Hogan was almost handicapped in that match. It's literally his back. He was in a lot of pain, or his ribs. I'm sorry, his ribs actually, and he gutted it out. And to me, I just love this match. And matter of fact, when we get off here, I'm gonna watch it again probably. But no, I'm serious. I loved it because Hogan, me being a kid in the '80s, a young kid, in 10, 11 years old, and what Hulk Hogan meant to most kids that watched wrestling, and then you got The Rock, and I just, man, I love this match. I just love everything about it. The ending, hulking up, man. That crowd blew the roof off that place, and it really overshadowed what was a great main event as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And Randy, your thoughts on that?
Two things. One of the rare times Hulk Hogan done the right thing for the business.
Yeah, agree.
And I thought one of the things that led me to that match, and believe it or not, that match is on my list. But
Are
it,
you serious?
What?
it was on the list of matches that I thought could be listed here.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
But the greatest emotional match in history is the what I choose to define that as. Not one of the best matches in ever, but wrestling's about emotion. Yeah. It comes that match.
Yes.
That match gets the emotion. You hear Ric Flair a lot on my list. If I was making a list of the most emotional matches ever, Hogan Rock, Flair, Vader. That would probably be my 1-2, where Flair was going to retire if he doesn't beat Vader, and they meet in a WWE paper or WCW pay-per-view. It was the same feeling, and God bless the WWE destroyed Vader, or Shawn Michaels destroyed Vader. But if we remember, Vader was just as big a star as anybody at one point. It kind of was the same feeling. And I remember watching both matches and just being tingling at the thought of the match. So great match. I'm not the biggest WWE fan, but we may have talked about my two of my three favorite WWE matches in the last 2 minutes.
Good deal. Jeremy, you're number two.
Well, my number two, and I struggle with this, guys, a little bit. And Randall's already mentioned uh, Ric Flair, and I have at number two, and you could group them together, but I'm going to be specific about the very first of the Flair Steamboat trilogy in '89, and that was at the Chi-Town Rumble. Um, I watch it after the fact, right? I didn't, we've talked about that, Howie, where we lived. We didn't have cable. We barely had the ability to watch, 3 channels. So,
Right.
again, that's watching it on the network. That's going back on YouTube. This match, the Chi-Town Rumble, for me is my favorite. For one thing, that crowd was hot as well for that match. And I don't think too, and Randall may disagree. He probably could think of another pairing, but I don't know of many that would have the chemistry that Ricky Steamboat and Ric Flair had in the ring. And to me, it was a beautiful dance, if you will, between two people that had that chemistry, the physicality of it. And let's not underrate that. They were physical.
Oh,
Those chops, those chops. I mean, with chops happen now, and I'd say Gunther has probably the best chop there is. But man, they were killing each other. Uh, work at match gets outside the ring, you know, but they matched each other. It's like one. They were, and I think I've heard Flair talk about it. It was a competition between the two. And I think that's what made it great, as far as who could, you know, not just win the match. That was already predetermined, but who could outdo each other in the ring. And Steamboat, probably the greatest baby face of all time. Flair, probably one of the greatest heels of all time. At least that run in the 80s. And so this match, the ending, hey, the ending, love the ending. Got Teddy Long coming in as that referee to swoop in and get the count. Jim Ross on the call. Uh, that was cool. That was good stuff all the way around. And I know they went on to have two other matches that were equally as great, but this one for me is my favorite of the three. And just just good stuff, man. So good.
Here you are talking about
Title,
predetermined, but yet
by the way, title
shirt.
change hands.
You're
Huh?
talking about predetermined stuff, but yet your shirt says never break kayfabe.
Yeah, hey, yeah, but we all know it's we all know.
Well,
Hey, but by the way, title change hands there. If I'm not mistaken, that was Steamboat's first world championship. So yeah, individual title. I know he and the cool thing about their chemistry is they had great matches, and Flair said this, and Steamboat has as well. They had great matches in the late '70s and before this, early '80s, and so they developed that chemistry over time. And it to me, it's a thing of beauty. I love it.
so we're halfway through the thing. Let's give our knowledge to our drinks. I know Randy's got the monster. Jeremy's got water in his cup, just like I
Speaking
do.
of speaking of, I'm going for a refill, guys. I'm listening, but my camera's off.
So Randy, go ahead. You're number two.
well, we're going to have to pause because Jeremy and I are thinking a lot alike again. Now, I want to make this point, and I'm going to be long winded. What Flair and Steamboat was at that point was a trilogy. And it's one of the great trilogies. Now, Rock Xena only had 2 matches, but really it feels the same thing. One wins one, the other wins the other one. If you're going to do the trilogy, you're going to have somebody win, a draw, and then somebody win. So I broke this down to trilogies. And I started, what's the greatest trilogy in wrestling history? And Steamboat Flair is right there. My number two, I was going to go with what's the greatest trilogy. But Jeremy kind of spoiled my number two by talking about his number two. The reason this doesn't make my list at number two, where I put the greatest trilogy, that's the funny thing. I put the greatest trilogy here, And I really did think about Flair and Steamboat. This was the first match in the trilogy, and it was by far the better of the three matches. Steamboat goes over, they wrestle again to a draw, and then Flair puts the title back on. I chose to go with a different one, and it's probably not going a different trilogy, and it's probably not going to be your guys' favorite one because everybody knows I'm the AEW mark. Both of these wrestlers are in AEW now, but the trilogy happened in New Japan. It is the single greatest story told in pro wrestling history. You had on one side Okada, and on the other side Kenny Omega. They were three great matches. The first match goes within 1 minute of the time limit, and Okada wins it with the Rainmaker to defend the title. 720 days. You can think of Roman Reigns in the WWE very much like Okada was. The Rainmaker, the move, the Rainmaker was what this was all about. The second match is a time limit draw where Okada, even using the Rainmaker, cannot pin Kenny Omega. Omega unveils the one winged angel. Then the third match is at Dominance 2018. I got up at 3 o'clock in the morning to stream this on New Japan World app. Don Callis was one of the live voices, and Jeremy brought up Jim Ross. Jim Ross was the U.S. voice in the play of this match. This match built up over 2 years in New Japan Wrestling. And the reason I picked it was the final of the trilogy, which involved Kenny Omega finally defeating Okada cleanly in the ring and winning the New Japan IWGP World Heavyweight Championship. You think of a Japanese version of Flair Steamboat, this is it. Unfortunately, I do believe Kenny Omega put a large part of himself into this feud and has not been the same since then. I'm not sure Okada's the same since then. Mm-mm. They were physical, draining 1 hour matches. And I would challenge anybody to go find the copy of the Wrestle Kingdom match, the match in between, I can't remember which pay-per-view was, and the Dominance match, and tell me that it isn't the best trilogy in pro sports. The funny thing of it, while y'all are both watching the WWE and SmackDown, I think we're in the middle of the same kind of a trilogy there, because I think they have to be a third match between Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns, where maybe the roles are a little changed, and Roman's the face, and Cody's kind of the champion that's running from Roman. So we have a chance. We're living in a time where we're about to see maybe the equal to Flair, Steamboat, Okada, Omega. And hey, also at London, I think we see these two touch each other for the first time since 2018. And I hope when we do, we see really what the unreal pairing that Okada versus Omega is. And that's my number two. Came so close to putting Flair Steamboat there. My number one was always going to be, when we decided to do this, my number one has been mentioned on this show before, and I said it's the best thing I'd ever seen, and I'm still going to be my number one. But this took the epic role. I thought about Xena Rock. I thought about Flair Steamboat. I thought about Dusty Flair. I thought about Harley Race and Flair. This is the greatest, and I know that everybody doesn't know this, and not everybody was watching New Japan Wrestling in 2018. But the WWE was dead. AEW wasn't started, and the only thing I could find I enjoyed was this
New Japan.
New Japan, and I have my TV in front of me, so I can see what's happening without looking sideways. So my number 2, Kazuchika Okada, Dominance 2018 versus Kenny Omega, the final of their trio, with Omega finally defeating Okada after a 720-day run with the IWGP World Heavyweight title. And I think I talked long enough so y'all could watch that whole segment.
Man, you wasn't lying. You were long winded on that one.
I know, but I figured y'all.
AEW New Japan, Mark.
Y'all's mind was somewhere else at the time.
No, I'm actually not watching. Believe it or not, I'm not watching SmackDown right now because, as y'all well know, I don't watch wrestling. I have been accused of not watching wrestling.
During, and I'm gonna spoil it. I started the story, and I know Howie's been watching it during a bloodline attack of Cody Rhodes and Kevin Owens. So that's what's been going on while I was talking.
What?
I didn't realize you wasn't watching, Jeremy, but that I was trying to talk all the way through it.
No, it wasn't. I was looking at some notes here. So, yeah. So, I don't watch wrestling. Just so you'll know, if you're listening to this podcast, I don't watch wrestling. But it's like a soap opera. I can almost tell you what's happening. I knew the bloodline was going to attack someone tonight, probably Cody Rhodes, and guess what? I was right.
And I know we're not here to talk about them, but the new bloodline doesn't do it for me. And I love the 2 guys from New Japan Wrestling, and I love Jake too.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it's because I want them to be heels or they are heels. It just don't have the same energy as Roman and the Usos and Sami Zayn to me. It doesn't have the same energy.
I think I'm withholding on that. I think when Roman returns, I think it's all going to be worth what they're doing right now. I mean, I think it's going to be. My mind's racing with how they're going to do this, but when he returns and we get a bloodline feud, it's going to be great.
Jeremy, would you agree they're either killing Solo Sikoa or they're making him? Because there's only 2 things could happen. Roman comes back, destroys him, and he goes away forever. Roman comes back and destroys him, but he survives and gets stronger under a heel. So they're either going to make Solo Sikoa or we'll never hear of him again after this.
But I think with the efforts that they have put into making him this story, they could have went a different direction with the same story. They could have used Jimmy Uso or Jay somehow and made this the same story, if you will. But I think they're making him, and I think they're smart enough to know that when Roman returns, I think it's going to make him that much more. I hope that's the case anyway, instead of destroying him.
But I was thinking maybe they do what they did with Umaga. He came in as part of that 3-minute warning, kind of played Eric Bischoff's tough guy, went away for a year, and come back as Umaga. So I'm sorry I've kept running, but I'm going to
No, it's okay.
For a second while he does his number 2.
Jeremy's already done his number 2. So anyway, while Randall's away, here's my thoughts on the bloodline real quick since it was brought up. The second bloodline is not as good because they don't have a mouthpiece like Paul Heyman and Roman Reigns had. So that is part of the reason that I'm not getting into it, because you don't have that mouthpiece that's coming out there and getting everybody fired up, and then when Roman says anything, they're all booing him. So I think if they can find a mouthpiece for this second one, it might be better. Randy.
I was just doing the.
Oh, you're acknowledging somebody.
Yeah, and I'm going to give them their mouthpiece that they could put in there and make it work. and that would be one, Mr. CM Punk.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Jeremy, what's your thoughts on that, real quick?
So you mentioned Paul Heyman, and I think, well, let's just all. I mean, not everybody's going to agree because nobody ever does, but Paul Heyman is a genius. And his character and everything he has done throughout this run, to me, has done nothing but elevated Roman, elevated the Usos, and up to the point that they put him through a table, it's elevated Solo. Uh, every the things that Paul does, when Roman was away the last time, his hair started turning gray, and he started looking like he was, almost like he was losing. He was slowly dying, to,
Yeah.
to, to, for lack of a better term. And that's what's happened as well. Look, that's done nothing but put Roman, and credit to Roman, because he is. I think but it's just put him on a whole other stratosphere. Uh, I think if for this bloodline, I don't know how you make it any different, but I think had Heyman been on board and been their mouthpiece, it would have done nothing but elevated these guys. So I do believe, I agree, the absence of a real mouthpiece is visible. They need that. I don't know about CM Punk, but they do need a mouthpiece.
They need a mouthpiece that is a genius. And I mean, and you think I'm coming out of left field, but let's remember they did the exact same thing with CM Punk and Nexus.
Hmm.
Feud
They
with,
did.
yeah. So if you've had him on the shelf for the last year, paying him, use him because he's the greatest talker in the business besides Paul Heyman.
Yeah.
Now, Jeremy, you said something that you said nobody would probably agree with you. I think everybody would agree with you that Paul Heyman is a genius. It's just the
Yeah.
fact of you don't want him to keep your books. That's where you got
Yeah,
trouble.
I guess that's where the disagreement. Yeah, I meant that I probably should have worded it as a talent and a character. He's a genius as a business owner, not so much, at least from his track record.
Do you know? I forget that I know him. He was a big part of WCW when I was there. He
Mm,
was feeding, and I always talk about Missy Hyatt. That was the big storyline when I was there was Paul Heyman's feuding with Missy Hyatt. But I never realized it was him because he used the name Paul Dangerously.
yeah,
He
Paul E. Dangerously.
he looked
Paul E, get it right, buddy.
he looked so different, and um, I have. I'm going to go off, and I think deserves to be told. I have a Paul Heyman story, and I'm going to make it brief. They used to give the talent prepaid airline tickets in WCW. And Jim Cornette has told the same story on his podcast. And Paul Heyman was famous for getting these airline tickets, then cashing them in and getting airline credit, then driving to the town or getting a first class ticket, downgrading it to two regular tickets, taking a regular ticket and putting the credit in his pocket. He was running a Ponzi scheme with WCW, which got him fired the first time with airplane tickets. That was greater than anything he ever did running ECW. The guy is a genius. He's just a sleazebag. And Paul Dangerously is a great. And the only reason I said CM Punk is because I really, as much as I hate Punk, you would have to put a special person in that mouthpiece role to be able to stand up to Heyman. And the only person I know that could do that, because even with Cody Rhodes, they played Heyman as a sympathetic character and didn't let him attack Cody Rhodes. Is the other greatest talker in the WWE is CM Punk.
Yeah.
I didn't know you knew Missy Hyatt. Jeremy, give us your number one.
All right. So my number one, and
Hey,
we actually go. Hey, so let's move on from Missy Hyatt. Hey, look, all I want to say about that, Randall, is just we need to get you a picture of her today and keep that in front of you. I think that'll squash any
yeah,
earlier.
hey,
Yeah,
and I found it when she said she was dating Jim Ross. Those two combination of that pretty much puts it out ahead. But you got to remember, in '99, I was a college student
yeah.
running a circus, and Missy Hyatt was the prettiest girl
So
in the show.
when you mentioned this, when you brought Jim Ross into the equation, all I thought about was Blue Chew. That's all I thought about. Jim Ross and Missy Hyatt and Blue Chew. Randall has left the building. That's all I thought about. All right. So anyway, back to the program here. So my number one, and we actually, again, this is not new, but I told you guys when we talked about Starcade '83, which was a great pay-per-view. Flair wins the title. But to me, my number one match is the dog collar match between Roddy Piper and Greg Valentine. And here's why. When I started watching wrestling when I was young, and my first exposure to wrestling was Crockett, but it was after this 1983, not long after, but it was after. And when I watched WWF, I saw Roddy Piper and Greg Valentine in the WWF. Prior to that, when I first saw them, I had no clue that they had basically a 4-year feud, a lot extended feud between the two of them. And this kind of culminated in '83 with Starcade, and they were tasked because we'd just seen, I think it was Larry Zbyszko defeat Bruno Sammartino. Uh, we saw that in the WWF at the time, maybe WWF. But their idea was to have a brutal, physical match. And if I'm remembering this correctly, what I've read and stuff, this was Piper's idea, is a dog collar match.
Even
And
had
he
it.
actually bought the chain, he bought the studded dog collars and put the gimmick together. And so this match for me, I love the storytelling because that's the way it ought to be when there's blood, when there's extreme physicality. It ought to be, this is the last resort. This feud, this hatred, this dislike we've fought, we've done all that, and it's so extreme now that we're gonna put an end to this. That's the way this thing ought to work. We shouldn't bleed every time there's a match. You shouldn't, John Moxley, uh, even Flair to a certain degree. But to me, I thought this match was beautiful. It was physical. It was believable because Valentine had already kayfabe injured his ear, and he actually had some hearing damage, if I'm understanding that correct as well. And you can correct me on that, Randall, if I'm not wrong. But I read an account that Piper actually he about cut his ear off to get that effect, that ear was damaged. And this match revolved around Valentine going to that ear, pounding on that ear, trying to get the best of Piper. I loved it. I love the call of the match. I believe that was Bob Caudle that called the match. and I think I told you guys when we discussed this match, his descriptive of losing equilibrium because of that ear, all the things that he did. I just thought this match in and of itself, every part of it, I thought it was a work of art. Even though it's years ago, the first time I watched it, I was captivated by it. And I felt like it was like real. This was a real blow off. There's real animosity here. What I didn't know is they did this match like 40 more times prior to them leaving and going to the WWF in the territories. And I think what Piper's quoted as saying it was a dumb idea on his part, that the brutality that had to be used for that match to work. I know the MJF CM Punk dog collar match was a good one. I don't think it compares to this one. So that's my favorite. That's one of my most awesome matches that I've ever seen. And it'll probably always stay that way because I just thought every aspect of it was perfect and beautifully executed and believable and realistic, right? So that's my number one match, guys.
All right, Randy. Let's
All right.
hear your
Let,
number one.
let me add to Jeremy's match. One, it's the worst example you can pick to use blood as, because PWI rated those 40 matches the bloodiest feud in wrestling history. Because night after night, it was equal blood to what we've seen. It is not anything that John Moxley
Mm-hmm.
bet it up every time he's bled in AEW. It wouldn't equal those 40 matches. Number two, it's the
Agreed.
forbidden door. Because when they both arrive, Valentine leads first and goes to the WWE. He's kind of established. And they bring Piper in, he's doing Piper Pit. The first breaking of Forbidden Door was the fact when he come on Piper's Pit, there was obvious tension and they had to hug it out after several moments of just high tension between Valentine and Piper. So that feud from Charlotte carried to New York and they broke the Forbidden Door. And thirdly, to correct or to add to Jeremy's point, it's great. It's so good. I, I I didn't think about this one, but it deserves. But if you love this match, I'm going to give you one to go watch and everybody research. And you think you've seen Andre the Giant, but go Google and find Andre the Giant versus Stan Hansen in New Japan Wrestling, and it's the closest thing to the brutality of Piper Valentine. And imagine Hansen and Andre being that brutal. That most again, every one of these things I put most something on it. Most brutal match in history: Roddy Piper versus Greg Valentine, dog collar. I agree.
Yep.
I love that match, man. But am I going with my number one?
Yes.
The greatest thing I've ever seen. There's not, a,
Woo!
there's not a match that can equal it. And yes, he's in that match. I'm standing backstage. Every wrestler's on the Clash of Champions that night is watching what's about to happen at the stage. Nobody left. Nobody went anywhere. I remember Eddie Gilbert standing over my shoulder trying to get a peek at this match. Uh, at the time, there was 10 great wrestlers in the world. 4 of them was in this match. So I'm going to start with the participants, and then I'm going to talk about what might have been. The participants of this match was number one, and probably the least technical wrestler, the educated feet of Sweet Stan Lane. His tag team partner, the most underrated wrestler in the history of the game, beautiful Bobby Eaton, with the lip, the mouth, Jim Cornette as the good guys. The across the ring, the Nature Boy, Ric Flair, and his tag team partner, the recently turned Barry Windham with J.J. Dillon. It was the headliner to the Clash of Champions here in Chattanooga, Tennessee. The Horsemen versus the Midnight Express. And Flair, Windham, Eaton. That might have been 1, 2, 3 and the best workers in the business in 1989. Flair and Windham was so good. I mean, Windham and Beautiful Bobby was so good. I can remember that the other boys that were there, and I just a kid working security because I worked at the arena, we're talking about they had sat in the back and they booked a whole section of this match where they were going to do it on their knees just because they could and be that great. This was also a test, I believe, by the NWA and Crockett. And soon after, Arn Anderson, Tully Blanchard left to the WWE, and their first inkling of the WCW was to replace a new Four Horsemen, get rid of Jim Cornette, and the Four Horsemen become Barry Windham, Ric Flair, Beautiful Bobby Eaton, and Stan Lane. And I think it would have worked perfectly. And no whatever he cut, the only thing about it is they wanted to make Jim Cornette an announcer and take him out of a wrestling role. I've never seen a match like this. I've never kayfabed for a match like this. The closest kayfabe I've ever come to watching that match was the Undertaker Triple H at WrestleMania we were at, Howie, which kayfabed me to death. But if you've not watched it, it's called Seasons Beating, Clash of the Champions. I don't know if it was because I was there, guys. I don't know if it was because I loved everybody was in the ring. I don't know. Cornette was an odd piece to the match. What are you going to do with a good guy manager? He can't interfere, then he's hated, you know. But his interview after the match, where the Horsemen go over, was just great. Great. And it wasn't against the tag team of the Horsemen. It was against the tag team of the two frontline guys. And Ric Flair working with Bobby Eaton. Highest ratings ever drawn on the Saturday night show on WCW, Ric Flair versus Bobby Eaton for the World Heavyweight Championship. Highest ratings ever drew on Sunday, Ric Flair versus Brian Pillman for the Heavyweight Championship. So those are the guys he liked working with. But Season Beating, find it in UTC Arena. Greatest match I've ever seen in my life. To this day, I've never. I can't explain it. There's not a moment in that match I even thought, well, this ain't real. Kayfabe was alive. It was great.
Yeah.
So was that a pay-per-view or was it just a regular show?
Is it Clash of Champions free on TBS? It was probably one of the WWE pay-per-views, because what would happen was they run these big events. WWE was playing really cruel and trying to block the pay-per-views from the WCW. So what the WCW started doing was running a free Clash of Championship opposite of a WWE pay-per-view. Since this was at Christmas, I don't remember, but I thought WrestleMania started at Christmas time, but I could be wrong. I would think it was definitely straight across from a WWE pay-per-view.
Cool. That'll be one I have to look up and watch.
I may watch that with the WrestleMania 18 match.
Yeah. If I was building a card, WrestleMania 18 be at the top. My semi-main event would be and it would be the greatest wrestling match ever.
Good deal, guys. Great show tonight. We got a little bit off subject during the SmackDown stuff, but hey, we're still talking about wrestling. That's all that matters.
Yeah.
So, guys, I told you what we're going to be talking about next week. It'll be the Flair Dusty Rhodes, not necessarily a match, but just their, I hate to call it a feud, but to everybody else it was a feud, but it was a friendly feud behind the scenes as well, because they didn't want to.
I think it started as friendly, but I think it turned unfriendly.
Yeah.
Then it came back to friendly. But we got to include Ramblin' Ricky Rhodes in there.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and then you actually have to remember that's two extremely large egos, and so how could you not have a little conflict when you got two extremely large egos like Dusty Rhodes and Ric Flair? So that just comes with it for sure.
I remember hearing, I think it was Jim Cornette talking about they were both in Vegas. Rhodes and Flair was in Vegas, and Flair comes out with a fur jacket on, or fur coat, not jacket, but fur
Yes.
coat. And then Dusty goes in and gets one more expensive. Flair takes his back and swaps it in and gets one more expensive than Dusty. And they went back and forth for 2 or 3 visits there just to
Yeah.
try to one up each other. So that's why I said it's a little bit of a friendly thing.
In WCW TV, suddenly they were more dead minks on TV than they were in every store. Because one week Dusty would show up with one, then the next week Magnum would show up with one to match Dusty's. Then they'd show up. I mean, it was
so the complaint I have, and I've not always been the biggest Dusty Rhodes fan anyway. I know when I was a kid, I thought he was, Dusty Rhodes, the evil Four Horsemen. If you're going to call yourself the son of a plumber, if you're going to call yourself the common man, which you don't show up wearing a mink coat, you don't show up wearing leather like early Dusty. So I that's where you'd see him wearing a ball cap and a David Allen Cole T-shirt, and then you see him come out with a mink coat and a Rolex on. Yeah, I'm not buying it, Dusty. Not buying it.
at least you to take your mark ass out of the wrestling room one night. I've got that story when he told me to somebody to get that mark ass kid out the dressing room so he can get ready.
What'd you do?
I bought him a 6-pack he told me to bring. Also, one more Dusty Rhodes story. That son of a gun would get buck naked except for his shirt and walk around, and you'd look at him, be talking to him, and he wouldn't have nothing but a shirt on and nothing underneath. So the locker room, you didn't want to talk to Dusty. So
yeah, I don't think I'd care anything about seeing that.
You got to remember, the first time I remember seeing Dusty Rhodes is when he came in at the WWF, and they put the polka dots on him. He was a common man. Put the black and yellow or black and gold polka dots, and he came out there, and he was the common man. That's when I first saw Dusty Rhodes, because like Jeremy's mentioned tonight, and we've mentioned several times before, I didn't get to watch it on cable because we didn't have cable, but yeah, that's going to be our topic for next week. It's going to be Dusty and Flair, the friendly feud. And guys, y'all got any closing remarks for tonight?
well, I'm sure I'm going to bring in the greatest wrestler on God's green earth. About Flair, you can't talk about them without talking about the man that was the real world champion, not a faker walking around with a plastic belt, but him, the man, and that would be the greatest wrestler on God's green. Go ahead.
That's not hardly a Ric Flair caliber Harley impression, but that's not bad, Randall.
Hey, follower of River-City-Media, Justin Ray, son of Harley Ray. So
Nice.
out, Justin.
Nice.
Jeremy, what you got?
Nah, man. Hey, look, this is nostalgic thinking about these matches, and no joke, I will be watching these as soon as we get off the air here. Because I don't have live TV at this point. That's why I'm not watching wrestling. Uh,
You'll
but
watch you watch stuff we don't need you to, but when we need you to watch something, you won't watch it.
yeah, that's right. So hey, look, I'm unreliable, guys. Let's just face it. I'm flaky.
So
I
reliable.
mean, old, unreliable. No, I look. I've been a bad stretch. I did. There's again. I'm gonna say it again. A ton of wrestling content every week. I I'm at this point. I can't devote that much time to watching all of it. Uh, so
Let's
I did
let's
miss.
let's be
I'm,
serious about it. I mean, if you're really serious about wrestling and you watch it, there's wrestling on every night except for Sunday night.
that's right, and that's good. If you're a huge wrestling fan, and I mean, and you there's plenty of options if you like AEW. If you want to watch Moxley bleed every Wednesday night or whatever, or NXT is a good product. TNA's a good product. Um,
You got
it
Monday Night Raw, you got Tuesday night NXT, you got Wednesday night Dynamite, you got Thursday night TNA, you got Friday night SmackDown and the
co-
Rampage, and then
yeah,
Saturday night you got Collision.
Collision. Yeah, and if there's a pay per view, you got a pay per view. Uh, so
You
yeah,
know,
it's
this show reminds me sometimes what Enzo Amore is going to be like when he finally grows up.
Who us?
Enzo.
I mean, Enzo's gonna be like us when he grows up.
Yeah.
cup of haters.
They're going to be just like Jeremy working at Coca-Cola. Enzo's going to get a job at a beverage company, start a show, and then never want to rest. That's Enzo there. So from here
Hey,
on,
I can do
it's Jeremy
the
Amore.
my favorite thing about him, and there wasn't a lot, but that little dance when he was paired with Big Cass, and that little whatever that was, that little dance he done in the ring, that's my favorite thing about him.
And
So other than that, no,
and you can't teach that.
yeah, yeah.
I liked it when they had him in the. I think it was him. They had him in the cage up above the ring, and he got lotion and put on him where he could slide through the bars.
Yes, that's good. They were big. They
Yeah,
were
they were.
big for just that brief moment, and I think some of it had to do. I think the fact that it seemed like it just ended. I think it was those guys. It was them. Big Cass is outlined and Big Bill now that he had issues with alcohol, and I think Enzo, whatever his name is now, I don't even know, but known as Enzo, I think he had his issues. I think his personality clashed with people. But that wasn't a bad pairing right there at
They
all.
had the people. They had the people in the palm of their hand there for a while.
And
Yeah,
I'm Bill right now, and he rebuilt his life, and
yeah,
he went back with, and he's gotten a place now with Jericho where he's replaced what was the
Hi guys.
uh,
yeah.
uh,
And speaking of that, flip it over there right now because he's about to beat up. Good night. God bless.
Yeah, we're gonna get out of here, guys. Next week's story is gonna be Dusty Rhodes with Flair. A lot of stuff going on next week on River City Media. Let's give some plugs out real quick. On Monday night, Beyond the Booth, you're going to have East Ridge football coach who?
Coach Chad Barger from the Easter Ridge Pioneers. One of the truly good guys in coaching. Y'all, if you got someplace you love high school football and you got no place to support, write a check to East Ridge High School because Coach Barger does more with less to help the kids of the community He deals with at-risk kids over East Ridge. He's making a difference in this community. He's at a school where I needless to say, there'd be some coaches scared to walk into the school, and I've never seen a man more dedicated, more loving, more perfect fit than Chad Barger at East Ridge right now. So Monday night, Coach Chad Barger, my friend, I call him my friend, and I'm proud to call him that here on RiverCity-Media.
Then Wednesday night we're on Beyond the Booth is going to be a member of the transplant games that Phil was part of. One of his teammates on the basketball and won a bronze in tennis, I think.
He won a gold in tennis and a bronze in
bronze in basketball, yes.
His name is Williams, and I'm sorry I don't know his whole name. I did a bio for him, and one thing Phil didn't even bring up, he's a teacher at Benjamin Russell High School. So 2-year heart survivor. 2 years ago, he had his heart transplant, already competing at a high level and winning that gold medal. Where our boy Phil don't like to talk about it, but he went 2 and out in tennis. This guy.
And then also join us Thursday night for Beyond the Booth. And then Friday we'll have live look-ins at the Media Day. DeKalb Jackson County Media Day is this coming Friday. We should be able to get to see Mr. Jeremy Johnson's friend Adam there. I think he'll probably be there for fun radio. And so
Mr. Paul Benefield, Mr. Tanner Nelson, Mr. Luke Pruitt, all of your favorites on RiverCity-Media, and of course, we're gonna be talking to every coach, and there'll be break-ins, and I plan on just putting clips from everybody that has interviewed. Maybe get 2 minutes with Coach Benefield or Coach Pruitt along the way, and just look forward to being down with our number one area of following is that North Alabama area.
That is because of Mr. Jeremy Johnson, all his followers that follow us on here.
No, I would say no to that, but I appreciate it.
Has got his following.
No, I've got tens and tens of followers. So.
Well, that's tens and tens more than me and Randy's got. So there you go. So anyway, stay here on RiverCity-Media. Got a lot of stuff going on. Go to YouTube, follow, like, share, and we're going to get out here. But stay with RiverCity-Media. Always some type of content going up new every day. And so thanks for joining us tonight. And join us next week on It's Still Real to Me here on Thursday night, hopefully. Hopefully, Jeremy. Hopefully next Thursday.
Let me go ahead and say I will be in New York City, probably in Madison Square Garden on Thursday night. So I will not. We'll have to try to work on that schedule wise.
What are you doing in New York City, Madison Square Garden? You highlight your main event and something up there?
That's right. How did you know?
So,
no, actually, we going to the final concert of the residency of one Billy Joel, in Madison Square Garden. So cool. It'll be fun.
What'd you say, Randy?
Yes, he's main eventing against Psycho, the Michael wrestler, held at Madison Square Garden.
That's it. That's it. Good night. God bless. Join us. Hey, go out, support Wilburn's Waxing Solution. I nearly forgot about them.
Yes.
You got that picture up real quick?
I was ready before you were.
Wilburn's Waxing Solution, a proud supporter of Beyond the It's Still Real to Me here at 256-996-9731. They're on Facebook, Wilburn's Waxing Solution. Go on there, look at all the before and afters they got to all the floors. Supporter of It's Still Real to us here. So for Mr. Jeremy Johnson, his main event next Thursday night. For one of the long lost Briscoe brothers over here to my left. Are you the Randy Briscoe of them? I got Jeremy on that one. Do you dance, Jeremy?
Woo! 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 Roll Tide!
Good night. God bless. Hit the end button, Randy.
Please! Woo!